what I mean? Like, that's an accent. That's not necessarily a lifestyle. Yeah. I do. I've read.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm trying to
In the midnight oil.
hurry here.
Okay.
Well, yes. It's not gonna work. Well, it's not, we'll have to do that. We can do this. It's not a problem. I just want to make sure that we get the audio.
Oh, me. That's what I said. It was perfect and he just, oh, yeah. Put it on my phone. Just go this way, that little way. There you go. At least another one.
Then I'll put the mic on the floor. How about that?
So worth it.
Hmm?
It's so worth it.
I know. Well, it's the comedic effect.
You want throwing stuff, I'm throwing lots and
All my influence. Someone put it right there so everybody can be heard.
that's Star Wars.
Yeah. It's what it is. We're on. We're good. Whenever you're ready.
Let me just do one. Just one. I listen to my Brian with the law out on lunch.
Thank you.
All right. Brian almost get up and give me CPR. And with that pepper went straight to my throat. I was like. Is it the other one I know?
All right. Thank you all for agreeing to come back on such a tight turnaround. So the just to acknowledge to acknowledge the last offer that came across when we met just 2 days ago was and as we acknowledge a creative way to think of addressing the equity issue that's inherent in a flat rate mandate, which is a good thing. I mean, raising the minimum salary, of course, or minimum wage is certainly a good thing, and we're happy there's happening sooner rather than later. But wanting to address the compression issues that it obviously gives rise to, y'all had proposed either a 3.75% increase or raising those below 15 to 15, whichever one of those was greater. That helps to address compression among those who already make 15 or more, or that their raise to 15 would be less than 3.25%. So as we expressed, we appreciate that structure. However, that was coupled with but it was coupled with an offer to assume 75% of the increase to healthcare premiums. And this, so that was one offer. The other was 3.5 increase or $15 an hour, whichever was greater, or the increase of 15, whichever was greater, and assuming 100% of the healthcare premiums. That's about a $60,000 difference in the healthcare costs. So we, looking at your offer, but also the bargaining unit numbers, wanted to acknowledge that we came in, our original offer that was a counter to was that was a flat across the board $3.89 raise. 389 was the maximum amount that any of our employees would have to be raised to meet, the lowest paid employees would have to be raised to meet the $15 an hour threshold. So to achieve equality, I guess, if it left some room for negotiation on equity, was 389 across the board. This, of course, is certainly we were far apart, but we did want to come with an offer that was closer to what you brought. We had originally planned to shift from the flat rate to more of an alignment with the consumer price index here in Pinellas. We've had a great deal of discussion on that, that we are one of the hardest hit areas in the country at 11.3%. We actually went on, we're coming down even further to 8.05, which would have acknowledged the 3.25% increase that our PESPA employees saw relatively late in the year last year because negotiations went long. And so acknowledging that within the last year, those increases had happened, we had come even further down to 8.05. We recognize as well that there was a cash payment to employees at the end of bargaining last year. I think we landed on $350, which was certainly helpful to our employees and was something that they could have in their hands really very quickly. And it amounted to, for our lowest paid employees, approximately a 2% differential. That was a one-time payment, of course, but it did amount to approximately 2% for some of our lowest paid employees who are ostensibly struggling the most right now. So combining that with the path that we've been on, acknowledging that the increase this year has to be based on obviously our budget here in the district, but also the reality of how difficult it has become to live and work here in Pinellas County, especially for our lowest paid employees. We wanted to extend an offer or a counter offer rather of 6%. This would be increasing the wage to a minimum of $15 or by 6%, whichever is greater, following the same structure. And I apologize if I didn't. I don't. We received yours in Word, and I tried to format it about the same. I'm happy to clarify if my writing of it is different from your writing of it, but the intent is to follow the same structure that you proposed, which is to raise those employees who are still below $15, but that the increase to $15 would be less than a 6% increase, then they would get the 6% increase. So we'll go ahead and send that across. Can you do that? Thank you. Sorry, Brian, let me make sure I got the right one. Sorry. That's the smaller stuff, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. Got it. I neglected the hole punch before I left it, so I'm all over the place. Thanks. Yeah, exactly. I need to start carrying one of the little handle ones. I don't know how to
carry the trapper key. That problem.
Listen.
There's one in there. From what I understand, I was never.
Don't threaten me with a good time. You know how I feel about trapper keepers. So what we can propose is like I said, the 6% and the 100% coverage for health insurance. Just to run through some of the numbers, I know we talked a little bit about it last time. And we also agreed, we were talking with Dave that his numbers were somewhat different from the ones that I had run through the bargaining unit. And there's always movement because this is based on who is actually here versus just units. So there's always movement. But as of August 1st, our current expenditure is 50 for salaries is 50 million. It's going to cost 1.3 million to approximately 1.3 just to bring everyone who's below $15 an hour to $15 an hour. So that 1.3 is there whether or is required whether we like it or not. At the 3.5% offer, this would be an additional 1.2 million. to get those below 15, but at a minimum of 3.5% raise. It would be an expenditure over your current of 2.5 million. So it's about 2.5 million more than what your last offer to us was, 2.5 more than what you, what we're currently paying in salaries. Our offer would be a difference of approximately 3.5. That would be anyone in our unit, it looks to be, and unfortunately, not unfortunately, but the reality is that most of our PESPA employees that are below $15 an hour are at $14.26. That's our average, or our most common wage. And because there are so many of them, and that is the cutoff point, that their raise would be approximately 6%. It's really somewhere in the 5.5% range. Raising them 6% does cover a lot of employees, but the total cost is still about about $1 million more than what your last offer was of 3.5. And maintaining 100% health coverage is why I'm using that as a point of comparison. So I feel confident that we can find a way to, particularly with the availability of the reserved ESSER funds, to help address the healthcare cost, or further address the healthcare cost, that we can find a way to bridge that gap of $1 million to affect what would be an extremely meaningful raise for our PESPA employees. And so that I just wanted to walk through some of our numbers to help you understand where we came from or where we're coming from. Now, again, Dave's numbers may look a little bit different from mine, but I think that we're pretty much adjusting for the fact that some are still below 15, but they would be seeing the 6% increase. I think that we're pretty close. Do you want us to hop out? Then I can. It's your house. We'll stay in the living room.
We say we're gonna have it.
Yeah. Believe me, I don't either. It's
Well,
not the
I'm
best.
old
This
and
isn't
you
my
and not
best
in my
ankle.
Not in my view. This is my
Thank you so much, and I know we took a little bit of time.
No, no.
for,
No, you're fine.
Just looking
We're
at
looking
all of
at
our
it.
numbers and, you know, that's part of this, caucuses might take a little longer if we're taking into account, we're just looking at all of it.
Yeah.
So we appreciate the comments that were made prior to the caucus. We are not, able to accept the 6%, or 15, whichever is greater, as well as 100% of the healthcare. But we would like to, and this is why we were taking our numbers and crunching a little bit more. We would like to counter, I'm gonna go down my notes. Actually, I know your MOU is pretty similar, so did a good job of that, but, we would like to counter back with a 4% salary increase. Or move to $15, whichever is greater, 15 or 4%. As well as we will also offer with that 100% pickup of the health. Same statement, I know being retroactive July 1st if ratified prior to September 26th. So those are 4. I was just reading down our proposal. Obviously, we would need to capture that. This is something we were just talking. So I obviously don't have a.
Yeah. Just a quick note on the retro thing, because I think that, just so we know, just so we
Sure.
recognize that
Uh-huh.
retro has, while it's been edified in the
Yes.
agreements that we've come to, it has, as far as I don't know, I only did the handful of them that we did last year. Have we done a retro contingency, like as part of your proposal? Have you proposed a contingent retro? Has there ever, has there been within recent memory a contingent retro? Well, so, even though our agreements, from last year edified that, the increases that we finally settled on would be retroactive to July 1st, it was edified there. It was, at least when I got there, it was always part of the discussion, and my understanding from my colleagues was that it was, that had been a part of every other salary agreement that they had within recent memory. Right, yes,
Otherwise agreed.
unless otherwise agreed, and that's why I guess I was wondering why we had,
That 1% raise. That was not retro. That was done significant down. Superintendent time frame is the details of John Stewart. We do anything at all. So the only thing possible is maybe a 1% out of that. So we did that effective in January, and the of course agreed to it. It's in your library. So we have, that's the one instance, that's point that we did.
okay. Because like I said, our people didn't have any recollection of that being the case. And I know I understood the contract language, so I just wasn't sure why that there was a contingency attached to this particular proposal. But as you know, obviously, we took that out of, we took that contingency out of our proposal, or counter rather. So recognizing though that you're attaching it to your counter.
So I just feel compelled to say, lively discussion.
Lively. Aren't all our discussions lively?
I showed you what the numbers are. I don't know. Somewhere south of 3%. 2.5% stretch, but it could be 4% as well. I want to point out the reason for that manifold, but one of the things, the legislature, and it's a good thing, the legislature put upon us the $50 per hour,
It is.
and they didn't fund it.
Mhm.
They didn't fund it. So that's a significant, that's a 1% raise across the board for all employees. But just the recent employees, it's significant. So I want to let you know that this is it's a big number, it's a big stretch. And that $7.2 million, I had to find out that finance.
Mhm. And yeah, and and I agree, we absolutely agree, especially to this bargaining unit. I mean, that the legislation was very meaningful. Didn't mean that it was easy to do or that there were, and I think there is a big public misconception that there is additional funding attached to that. There was not. Yeah, it really isn't important because the way that it was presented to the public, including including our members, listening to, the news, was that there was all this additional money, and there wasn't. In fact, like you said, there was a significantly more or a significantly larger, amount of money that was held
I
out
think it's
for.
important to note, we have been talking about this for the last couple of years with that 2026 date in mind, and that,
Mhm.
we were looking towards that,
Yes.
whatever, we had a plan, and then all of a sudden,
It
no, it
drops,
needs to happen right now.
Mhm.
So,
definitely so.
yeah.
And for many of our, many of our lowest paid employees, this would be, like you said, more than a.
And we sit here and I mean, I can't argue it. I mean, literally, I don't agree, disagree, yeah.
It's a wonderful thing, but.
Yeah, that would have been nice. Yep. Yeah, that would have been nice. So we would need to caucus. I've got some more numbers that I hate to have y'all hop back out right as soon as you come in, but I just need to run some things.
I appreciate being able to go back.
Yeah, yeah, we need to. Okay. Thank you. And ours I don't.
No.
like that.
No, it is not a,
Yeah.
somebody's watching. Although with the noise that's coming from the mechanical room right beside us, did you not, no, you didn't go down. I went to the restroom and walked by the hallways. Doesn't sound good. Oh, they're making popcorn. They're making really big popcorn. I don't know what else.
I remember one day when
If
this,
one would say yes, it was a, no,
this door opened one day and I didn't real, have you ever been through this?
That's PD, but yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea. I was thinking it was just another classroom. It's like a whole other
Yeah.
operation happening back there. Yeah. I know. Bless their hearts.
But I just found a work phone without a cell.
Can't
So
do it
I think it is little bit.
Have to have daylight.
Yeah, I just. Use the phone.
Well, there's a couple times during the day, there's like
I just.
No.
don't feel like putting it-
negatively, but it's like bunches of people that are walking. I see them as I drive around because obviously we're close. There are people out walking all the time. I mean, before work, after work, and at lunch.
And I'm sorry, y'all, I don't, we're kind of in the same boat with not having all the numbers, we can say it versus having it written down. Just in the same boat that y'all were. Again, just crunching a little bit, that I see that the difference in the health insurance is about, like between 75 and 100 for our unit is, about a $60,000 difference. But if we go down, a percentage, or rather a quarter of a percent at this threshold, and that's what this is challenging because so many of our employees within the unit are at 1426. And that's where we would see that, potential increase because it's right between the two other sort of tiers. So, I know that tends to skew this at this percentage level, it tends to skew it a little bit. But I still, according to my numbers, still see about $120,000 difference. A variability between percent or quarter of a percentage point. So what we thought we would put forward, depending on, again, acknowledging that the health insurance, paying 1 quarter less will save about $60,000. We wanted to propose 6% at 75% health insurance or 5.75 at 100%. If we are at 5.75, we already talked about 6%. We're at 5.75. That is approximately 53.4 million-ish. That's about a $3.3 million increase from where we are now, acknowledging that to get from the minimum, to get there from the minimum of raising the minimum to 15, it's about $2 million over what it would just be required to raise the floor to 15. Your most recent offer of 3.75 comes in at 52.6. And so at that point, we're less than $1 million. It's less than $1 million between us. And I'm confident that whether we're looking for even with the health insurance differential, it should still be between less than $1 million. I think we can find it. I think it makes a huge difference for our people.
So I'm not going to argue that it makes a huge difference for your people. I think, and I'm gonna speak for Kevin, but I don't want to say it again. This has been a true struggle. When we came in and we were even at a 3.25, that was a struggle. So for us to go to 4,
And I'm sorry, I didn't run the numbers on 4. I didn't do
so
that.
we can, again, it's, I know it may sound, there is no way that we can do 5.25.
Jump in and remind you about, I said this before, over the $50 an hour, that's probably the other issue is the in town stuff. Anywhere else, like $20 an hour, but there's significant impact on the bottom line this year. We're expecting to go into that. We also get funded. We get funded. based on projection. When they attend the account, we're now down in students, so that's a proration of funding. Out of the way, I think it's gonna be December, so we're more funding away, so. My comfort level of 3.25% was based upon the projection that we have, based upon the fact that we weren't going to look at that balance scholarship that we were. So going forward, let's go beyond 3.25%, that's well beyond my level of comfort because of those things. To go to 4% is for us to go to 5.75 or 6% is conclusion.
Well, again, I know from a, and I think we always kind of come down to the same argument, understanding that understanding your comfort level is based on a careful analysis, and I don't argue with that. But I do think that when we talk about the comfort level, we talk about exactly what makes us feel comfortable. And I think from our side, and I know that you agree with this, but I think in terms of priorities,
So-
nothing's going to give us that comfort of rather more than knowing that our students, particularly some of our most vulnerable or medically fragile students, have the personnel that they need to carry out the responsibilities that we have taken on for their care and for their instruction. I think one of the unique things about this unit is that it has the potential to be to draw support from other funding sources because of the unique nature of some of the roles that our people perform. I think specifically of our one-on-one MBAs and so forth, that there is support for those roles outside of what we might have from our state allocation, in terms of federal support. I know that and I still have some analysis to do on the historical transfers in our budget. I'm really trying to analyze it as carefully as possible, and also consider that our budget looks different these last 2 to 3 years versus any time in history before. I mean, it's just such a totally different infusion of cash, but also tying up those funds in different ways. That I get that we're in a little bit of uncharted territory, but there are, even just looking at the preliminary numbers on the AFR, there are a number of categories that give us some room to maneuver. And the good news is, though, on this unit, we don't have to do a lot of maneuvering. If even to cover the 100% health insurance, that still brings it brings us within $1 million of each other. That is well manageable to do what we need to do for these people. And that's why we wanted to extend both options, because even though there's about $120,000 difference between the two, 1/4 percentage points, you're saving 60,000 in health insurance. So we thought that was a good sort of mirroring the format of your proposal 2 days ago. But again, much closer to where
So
we both started out.
600 students is 8%.
Hmm.
Then they come back to the operation.
How'd you know?
Says $1 million. Come back. It's amazing to me. I've been doing this for a long time. We look at a budget of roughly $1.5 million. There's a lot of funding sources that you look at and say, well, I've got $300 million capital outlay. We can't use capital outlay for salaries. Federal, you mentioned federal. Yes, where we can. We maximize what we charge to the federal projects and funds. That helps us to provide the grade by doing that. But there are rules associated with that too. We can obviously charge anybody a federal project.
No.
It's got to be a Title I, it's got to be a Title I school, it's IDEA, but there's also a capacity within that budget. For example, IDEA this year, because of the way things changed, they overspent their budget by about $2 million because it supports their students.
How much, sorry?
About $2
$2 million?
Well, what happens to that $2 million?
Mhm.
Well, because they're, well,
Well.
we're going to do an adjustment and not provide these services for students, but it's not something we do. Right?
Well, in most cases, it can't. I mean, those services are dictated by,
You can't do.
it's a compliance issue.
Title I can't use Title I anywhere except Title I school.
Mhm.
So I can't use Title I funding to erase. Do it. So, $1 million doesn't sound like a lot of money, but really, I mean, it's amazing how rapidly you use up $1 billion, which I'm offering over demand to replace the one, not the least of which is teacher salary increase, incentive, which, they gave us funding for that, but it wasn't enough for us to do what we wanted to do with teachers. We had to supplement that with other
Mhm.
funding, provide the raises we provided the last couple of years. statewide initiative. That was enough to help us to get to 47.5 or didn't get us all the way. And we had to get one on top of that. So, you know, we look at these funding sources and it seems like there's lots and lots of dollars available. And it is a lot of money, but there's also a lot of demand to come with that money.
Sure.
And, you know, when the state says to us, the district, you know, hey, by the way, we want you to go to $15 an hour and we're not getting funding. That's a big, and we do, you know, obviously that was a post impression, just like the 47.5 does. Would I like to mitigate that? No. Do I have the money to do it? No. And the thing of it is if we commit to something that we can't afford, when I say comfort level, I don't mean my personal comfort level.
No,
I mean the comfort level of where we are financially, the district where we don't want to be. We don't want to be sitting in this room this time next year talking about where we can use budget because we don't have the funding to support what we're trying to do. And that's a reality that districts face. We faced it several years ago. We faced the fact that here, we had these community forums, we invested in input from the community, how we're gonna mitigate $106 million loss in revenue. That's the fine balance you have to do. You have to look at what you have available, look at what you're thinking to do, and try and maximize it, obviously. But if you go beyond that maximum, you potentially go to the factory, put yourself in a situation where now you have to make production. Yeah, so we can do services to students if we overextend it. So that's where we're doing it.
Well, and I agree, I understand that this isn't a personal comfort level. This is a professional, it's sort of a professional determination that I'm making on our side. No, of course, that it's just a feeling. It's not like, and I tried to acknowledge that earlier. I understand that your comfort level is not just based on a feeling, neither is mine. It's based on an acknowledgement of facts, and then some of those facts are hard. My own personal comfort level wouldn't allow me to even go this low when I know that our people are dealing with 11.3% inflation. My professional understanding of what we can do as a district, of course, has to, have to balance that out. But when it comes down to it, it is about the people, because it's about the kids. And the only way to properly serve the kids is to have the people in place.
That's absolutely true, because we are a labor intensive organization,
Almost most
everything we do
organizations.
is attached to people and material supplies and stuff we buy, which are really a small dollar amount relative to the total budget, are attached to people as well. Really, it's all attached to students. And our funding is, driven by students.
Right. I see, and I did see that.
So-
Sorry.
We're gonna step out.
Okay.
5.75% is not something we can do. We're gonna see if there's something we can do. Because what we offered was a stretch, so we'll see if there's anything creative we can come up with. We'll be back, we won't be in the farms.
Okay, we will too. Thank you.
Kind of the computer you want.
I have some.
What was that?
Like if who wants, or what is it? Who wants to be a millionaire?
All right, so. So we have mentioned. We, on the deal during the quarter was on one that we have a 4%. So we are reiterating 4%. That is what we have, 100% of the healthcare. And the one thing we can add is a $150 one-time payment to all employees, which roughly, so, you know, the math that we do out in the hallway, roughly equates to about $300,000. If you prefer to take that 300 and do something different with 20+ year employees, or however you want to see fit to disperse that one-time payment, that would be something we would be. Okay.
And the reason we say that is some of the people that have moved up to 15 are getting a significant greater raise, and so you may want to take that equivalent of 150 per person equal to 300 and spread it out based on some other formula, whether it's longevity, wages, service, et cetera.
Did you say that for the entire unit, your calculations were it was 300,000? Okay, I just want to make sure. I wrote that down.
That's.
Hmm.
And again, the reason we are looking at this approach is because it's not recurring. And that might be a way we thought that we could recognize the inflationary pressures right now. But it wouldn't be something that's going to cause that.
Well, I mean, and I get it. I know we look at it different ways. I would maintain that $1 million is not going to send us over a cliff. I get that. But I also understand what you're saying. I just think that we are still so far apart on this. And now, you know, introducing the idea of a potential one-time payment, and maybe we could structure that differently. We would have to take a look at it more to kind of break down the numbers. So in other words, I don't think that we could probably accomplish this in a caucus.
Why?
Well, because I
mean,
just,
it's 300,000, it's 4%. I mean, what do you need to break down?
well, like we said, there's a potential to look at a one-time payment and distribute it differently depending on who, you know, what wage we're at. As you stated, there are a number of our employees that would be getting, you know, a less than a 4% increase. And in fact, one of our biggest employee groups would be coming in around that.
If you want us to get that information, like if you're interested in exploring this, we can provide information on how many employees are in.
I got it.
Oh, you
Yeah, I got it.
okay.
Yeah, but I don't, I mean, I have it, but I run it, you know, like, I run it through the sheet to get a total calculation on it, because ultimately it comes down to the total value of it, not solely down to the total value of the package, but it helps me see the difference between where we are. And I think, and I have not finished running the 4% in the same way that I had done your previous, you know, proposals and our proposals up until this point. But we are absolutely willing to look at your counter. I just, we're so apart right now between our two proposals that I think it's going to take some more, there's going to take some more working with the numbers to see how we could possibly bridge that gap.
I am not sure that, yes, we absolutely, we need the time to do it, you know, absolutely do it. We have gone, as you know, today, we've even stepped out multiple times. We are, this is our, we are pushing to get to 4. And I know we can talk about numbers and so forth. I'm not sure when you say, look at numbers to see if we can get any closer.
Well,
Again, I just want that to be shared, and I do want to reiterate, I know you don't feel it's the number that you want to hear or that you want to accept today. 4%. I don't know any other district out there that is has agreed. Unless you all know anything different than I do, but I've been trying to scour all the districts as well. And they're at one-time payments, they're at, 1%. But so we really feel this is a good offer. Obviously, we would like to give all of our employees much more. We said that from the very beginning.
And I
We
think,
have a responsibility to make sure that what we do is going to be, not a detriment for the years to come. So I appreciate the words, but I really want to make sure that everyone understands that this is a stretch, reminding that we have 18.4 and we are well above that now, for raises this year. So I just needed to say that.
and I totally, I don't disagree with anything you're saying, except for the idea that, and we've said this before, so it's nothing new, the idea that we have, that 18.4 is some sort of finite amount that cannot be moved.
And it has moved.
It's
Okay,
it's
so that's
quite
what
a
I said,
bit.
it's moved.
So.
Well, none of
Right,
us
so-
have settled, and so thus far it hasn't.
Our
moved total.
offers.
Yeah,
well,
the offers, yeah,
Listen, I can, I recognize that it's settled, but if I
Yeah.
offered it. it's-
yeah,
I have to be prepared to.
Sure.
To pay that. So,
absolutely, absolutely,
know.
yeah, and that's, and like I said, it's not,
Put in perspective, we have $18 million, 4%. So we have quite a
mhm,
$8 million, so, plus 1.6 million dollars. So we have a little significant.
but we're not at, so PCTA was, I know it's a different thing, but PCTA is not, the last counter, I think, for. Okay, you're talking about the general, okay, okay, yeah, yeah. Well, and I'm in the, well, Brian and I are just in the same boat where you're having to consider multiple units, and I get, and, I understand how challenging that is, I relate, 100% relate, yeah. But considering when we talk about the 18 million is this, that was presented originally as the number for all, for all employee group, or at least, yeah, exactly. So I don't think it's not taking away from PESPA to talk about the fact that is a large number. If we were to do, whatever we do to this particular segment of it has to be considered how that would apply to the other units. I get that.
But of the $18, this group and SCLU are getting $7.
mhm.
That's-
Well, sorry, but the 18 million I thought was I thought we had
It
already
is,
carved out.
I'm saying on top of
On
that.
top of that.
Oh, yeah,
It's
yeah,
$28
I see what you mean.
It's $28 million for everybody, and $7
I see what you mean.
for
Okay.
35.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to make sure we were considering
Okay.
that correctly. I I'm just trying to think of a way that there's any kind of movement that we could do that's gonna make that much of a difference without, of course, running the 4%. It'll take me a little bit longer to run. But considering that includes that same group of employees that are coming in at 14.26 wage. I don't keep using that number. It's the people that are right on that edge of the percentage increase versus the $15 an hour. And we've already run that through our calculations for 6% and 5.75, and each of those has made about $120,000 difference. The health insurance is a static $60,000 difference between 100% coverage and 75%, or 100% just board coverage and 75% board coverage. So I know that because that increase has already, because that group, that middle group is sort of in play, I get that could make a significant difference between 4% and 5.75%, but even so far, you're still talking about between 5.75 and 3.75. Sorry. it's still so much, it's still so significantly below $1 million. That I'm having a hard time understanding why we're so hung up on this one piece. When,
Because it's money we don't have.
It's,
It's truly, it's truly money we don't have. I don't have money for 4.25%.
and
4.4%. I don't have money for 3.75%. I don't have money for, I have money for 3.25%. That's what I have.
And if-
You want to start 5.75%, don't have it. That's why I'm not.
But I guess we've had so many discussions, and I hate that. Well, first of all, I don't know what I've said here at this table versus the other table, and I know that I've said it a million times, and so we always run the risk of sounding like a broken record. But acknowledging the reality of what it's going to take to keep our people in these roles. Not just making it an attractive place to come work, but a workable, a feasible place to stay working with the increasing overwhelming economic pressures that they face, specifically this group, more so than probably any other employee group, certainly between any of the ones that we have this conversation about.
can you show me one district in the state where they have come close to a support group increase of 4%?
Collier County settled for 8.2% 3 weeks ago.
Support.
For support.
That probably includes the $50. That's an oversight.
Well, you could
You
pick
asked
a
for an example, we
university,
got
yeah.
one, I got more.
If I would count to the percentage, that a 4% raise would be roughly, let's say, 4% plus 25. You guys be at that number. 50%.
Mm,
In reality, because I'll just give the numbers quickly. It's,
Sorry, yeah.
10.18% for increase to $15 an hour.
This is 10.8.
10.18. It's, if we picked up 75% of health insurance, it's 0.85% for that, and 4% on top of that. 4 plus. Full health insurance.
And I don't have the spreadsheet pulled up, so I can tell you what the terms are about.
Yeah, I have no idea what the terms are.
Well, 15.2%.
Mm. I also don't know the status of Collier's referendum. I know that there are other referenda that include some of it draws upon a local referenda that is written to include support staff, but we don't have it. So I know that that's another challenge. that we're facing. Could be, it could be.
We're almost done.
I also see, and there's, that it's not that there are a lot of categories that are chronically over budgeted. I don't really see that, except for what I've drawn some attention to, which is
So
the real aversion to debt service that has taken from cash reserves that
So
has to be.
I don't understand that. They mentioned the minute you said that, that's what they don't bond, have an aversion to debt service. How would that help the service?
Well, so one of the things that we talked about was the difference between, and the circumstances under which a public district would have to take out debt beyond their control.
They got that, okay.
Right, so it's not as if, and I made sure to clarify that the last time we spoke about it here, or I think maybe it was that may have been a PCTA's table
So the only debt that we have the capacity to pay is capital.
for capital.
Right?
Correct, but we've looked at an amount, we have, just like we talked about, we have almost no debt service in the district.
I don't see how that follows.
Because it's a pattern, it's a practice. When we talk about practice, there has been Kevin, do you want me to answer or don't you?
Well, no, you're going down a road that is really, it's going to dead end because it's capital outlay. Money that we-
It's not, but it's not. When you talk about debt service, it's evidence of a practice, and we've talked about this, and that wanting to avoid having debt service, being uncomfortable with that, but taking on limited capital bonds for capital projects that we are close to zeroed out on, close to being completely paid.
No.
But
we have about
anytime- Sorry,
We have about $100 million.
but I'm sorry, when you talk about recurring, or rather, when you're budgeting in it, when you're taking it out of the general fund on an annual basis, you're talking about a very, very small number.
Right.
Right?
The general fund does not pay debt service. General fund does not pay debt service. The only fund that pays debt service is the general long-term debt account group, which is the OT fund sources, and that's what we pay our.
From other, right? So, right,
That money comes from, it's transferred from capital outlay dollars into that general long-term debt account. group.
correct. But we've also, I understand that.
That's how we pay our debt. It's got nothing to do with government.
It does in the sense that anytime you devote that much and that much attention and that much priority to paying down debt, which I know is a priority for the district, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. However, it's a choice. It's a choice that's made.
No, it's not.
It absolutely
It's
is.
not. It doesn't, I can't use any of the money that paid, that's paying debt service for salary, that's capital outlay, that's it.
I understand what you mean. But when you devote that much, that means that those funds, particularly attacking it with I don't mean to say attack aggression, but going at it with some energy, that's taken from it's taken from elsewhere in the capital outlay. That meant that there were pieces within even the capital budget that had to give in order to put more,
It's
if I
actually
can
doing the
finish.
exact opposite of that. Because
I don't see that happening in the opposite. I see, if anything, I see that being probably one of the most significant categories that is consistently from year to year over budgeted.
The only way we can issue debt is capital outlay. And I'm not being condescending, I just want to try to understand. The only way we can issue debt is.
I'm
capital
actually
outlay.
okay with a little bit beyond the simplest terms. I feel like I've shown that.
The only debt we can have actually generally is for capital outlay purposes. We can issue short-term debt and other debt instruments for the operating fund, but generally those people who. TANs, tax anticipation notes, we issue every year, and that's a cash flow issue. We issue those because our cash flow start coming in from tax collection.
Right.
That's a different. The debt service that we issue, having lowered that actually provides you further funding to your capital outlay purposes. So if I had, let's say, $1 billion, let's go with my $3 billion debt. My debt service would be so high that I have less available in my capital outlay fund instead of paying so much of debt service to do my normal infrastructure. So that's what kind of happened. That's what happened with Hillsborough. I know Boulder, they're on, they were growing district, they had to build schools. The only way to build schools was to issue bonds, so top bonds. The top bonds have to be paid back over a period of years. And so, when you pay those bonds back, that comes from local capital outlay proceeds. That's how you pay those bonds. It has nothing.
It's separate from the operating fund, but it doesn't mean that it's not, that it's not related if we talk about this as the overall budget that the district has to stay within. Anytime that we prioritize, and we know that from our discussions,
You're comparing apples to oranges, but I cannot use, the only thing I can use capital outlay funding for is to pay my debt service, which is infrastructure repairs. I can reimburse myself through the capital outlay fund for certain debt related, not debt related expenses, right? Capital outlay related expenditures in the operating fund. You see, that's about $40 million a year.
Mhm.
We transfer over. We are at the maximum. The audit every year. We push the envelope. There's been times where we stay on order and then say, you know what? You guys can transfer these repair costs on buses, you know, so it's a very fine line. We do. But the debt that we issue has nothing to do with the operating fund at all. It is exclusively and totally paid for through capital outlay proceeds.
like I said, I understand that it stays within capital outlay. I understand that. What I am saying though, particularly if we have this wild card, and it's a blessing in many ways, but one of the curses of it is that it does complicate the funding and the savings to a certain extent. When you have devoted, when you had expenses that would have otherwise been spent, right, expended from the general fund or even through capital outlay. And we have this infusion of cash from our ESSER, and it comes in, and we use that to do a couple of things. Cover the expenses that are related to, our previous expenses that were related to COVID by the time that those funds actually land. I know we said that the ones for last year actually land, the funds that actually for last year landed in April. But it also, as we discussed, establishes this safety net to prevent this, like you referred to, going off a fiscal cliff, right? It's meant to ease, it's meant to provide an intermediate step as we move towards that funding not being there. That kind of funding can bridge the gap between general and capital. It can be used for both. Because even if you don't specifically put it in the capital fund, it can replace expenditures within the capital fund. I'm not saying that is the primary use, but it can be
Again, I
used.
agree with you. Capital funding cannot be used for operating purposes.
But ESSER can be used to replace some of those, the expenditures that we would otherwise have under capital funding.
Would want-
I mean, again, there's a number of priorities that I don't necessarily agree with.
But if I would say reimburse myself using ESSER funds, as capital fund, it does nothing for salaries.
I understand that it doesn't directly have, it doesn't specifically take out of the salary fund and put into capital. I get that. However, we know that we were at the situation at the very end of last year where we were again, through no fault of our own, through no real notice to us, an immediate recall of our ARP funds that were not expended. And so the initiative in the district, and I don't blame this initiative, I don't think this was a bad step to make, to try to quickly categorize as many expenses as we could to qualify for that reimbursement before having to send it back to the state. I certainly am not implying that anything was miscategorized. I'm sure it wasn't. But it was a good way to make sure that we were using those funds as responsibly as possible. But anytime you have this external funding source that for better or for worse complicates our fiscal figures, then if you're using that to cover expenses, it means that you're not using the funds that you have, whether general or capital, to cover those expenses in the first place. It reimburses, and we've already stated that whether those funds go back into the reserve as dedicated or uncategorized, it still goes back. It still goes back.
Mix capital with federal.
Yes, because it's a complex and they do interact. It doesn't mean that they go hand in hand. Pardon?
I said I know it. But again,
So mixing them is not, it's certainly not in an effort to make it less clear. I know that we've been trying to make it even more clear, but I won't settle on this idea that in our preparation for some sort of looming fiscal cliff, that looking at the budget creatively to find what amounts to less than $1 million, but could make a difference for each individual employee between a 4% and a 6% raise, I just don't buy that. I just don't. I don't believe that there is nowhere else to turn. I don't believe that is a completely finite number. I'm certainly, and I want to make sure that I'm clear about this because I do believe in working. We've done a great deal of collaboration today. I'm not implying that anything has been done improperly with the numbers. This process has been extremely transparent, but I do believe that we can find, just looking at across our budget this year, as well as historically, you can find where there are categories that allow and that have flowed down and allow for some movement, particularly with this, again, complicating, but also supplementing external fiscal source that or source of revenue that allows us to exercise some creativity with this. I think we can do it. I really do. And I'm not saying that your most recent, that your offer that's on the table of your counter, 4% with 100% health insurance, which by the way, is also reimbursable under ESSER or ARP rather, and $150 one-time payment that could potentially look at something different when it comes to our, our more senior or more veteran employees. I'm not saying that is not an exercise in creativity. I get that. It is. What I am saying is that still puts us significantly far apart in where we need to be to come to an agreement. And I'm not saying that we're an impasse on it, but I am saying that I think it's going to take more than what I can do at the table here to really analyze this and come back and say, this is where we can land. Now, I can make you a counter, but it won't be within this framework. And I don't think it's going to be close to where y'all are today anyway. So if you'd rather move forward with some speed, then we can, but I think today we're pretty significantly far apart.
I think we are. Yeah. Okay.
Oh.
All right. And just as you realize again, I just want to reiterate, we are at the end. So
Fiscally,
fiscal.
Yeah, yeah, everybody is, I get it. Everybody is. This gives me the opportunity to we'll look at your 4%, what that looks like for the whole unit, and see if there's some more creative solutions that we can. This is the first time we've talked about non-recurring payment. We'll try to come up with some additional ways to steps that bring us a little bit closer to the number. Do we want to set a date?
Pardon?
Friday.
Yeah. We're tied up on Friday. Yeah, we have the morning, I have the morning, she has the afternoon, so I unfortunately do Friday. With PCTA on Tuesday. Do you do Wednesday the 7th? Yeah. Could y'all do Wednesday the 7th?
It'll be like 1 o'clock, it'll have to be like 1 o'clock.
This timing worked fine for us. Would that work okay for you at 1? Okay. What did you say? That's okay. I can.
No worries.
All right, we'll do Wednesday the 7th at 1. I'm gonna put it tentative, but Paul, I don't think you'll send an invitation. Then. Sorry, what's this? Here, same place.
Gonna make it available.
Thanks. Okay. All right, I got it. And I'll look for your invitation, Paula. Brian's not able to be here, but we'll figure something. Yeah, thank you. All right, thanks, y'all.